Tetvav Adar Rishon, Hatavshim Someches, Shir Klali, Parsha Sisa.
Parsha Ki Sisa.
Parsha Ki Sisa.
Alright, so we're turning to chapter Lamed, which is not far from the beginning of the Parsha. Pasuk Lamed Dalet. This is the commandment and the tzivui of Moshe, of the Eibishter to Moshe Rabbeinu to make the Ketores, to put together the Ketores and build it from the different spices that it was constituted from, and then it was to be offered, as is well known, twice a day in the Beis Hamikdash, twice a day, both in the morning and in the late afternoon in the Beis Hamikdash. We begin with a reference to the end of last week's parsha before we enter what we have to say in the Pesukim of this week's parsha. At the end of Parsha Tetzaveh, we find the commandment of the making of the Mizbeach for the Ketores. It's what's called the Mizbach HaKetores, and it's called also Mizbeach because it was the inner Mizbeach that was inside the sanctuary, outside the Pareches, more or less opposite the Aron Kodesh, but outside the curtain between the Aron Kodesh and the sanctuary. You should sit in. I don't like people sitting out like in the back like that. Should finish on the table. Okay. So what is particular notice over there is that the Mizbach HaKetores is brought right at the end of all the commandments in reference to the Mishkan. In Parshat Truma, we have all the Kelim of the Mishkan, and in Parshat Tetzaveh we have the Big Day Kahuna, all of the garments of the Kahuna, and then we have a long description of what you might call the initiation of the sanctuary, or the Shivas Yemei HaMiluim as they're called, but they're described at some length after the whole Mishkan was already put up. And then right at the end of that, prior to the Siyum of the Parsha, is the description of the Mizbeach HaKetores. And that was, as we said, on the inside, not like the other Mizbeach, the Mizbeach HaOilah, which was in the sanctuary. So the question is asked, why does the Mizbeach HaKetores, which was one of the clay HaMishkan, why does it occur right at the end of the whole Seder of everything, even after the initiation, the long description in the Torah of the initiation of the whole Mishkan? All of a sudden we mention that you have to make the Mizbach HaKetores, which was put inside, as we said, in the sanctuary, and how many times to offer on the Ketores, the day, etc., Bismana, that should have been mentioned together with the Oren and the Shulchan and the Menorah, because it was one of the Kelim, it was inside the actual sanctuary, like the Shulchan and the Menorah and the Oren. So the Ramban immediately asks that question, and so does the Saporno and other of the great Rishonim, and Achronim deal with that question, why does it occur right at the end? And the Rabban's teretz of the Shaila is that the Mizbach HaKetores, Ika Inyone, was for Koved Hashem. It was an inyan that didn't have to do with the serving of the creatures of this world, like all the rest of the Mishkan did. Even the Torah Inyone is to instruct us how we should act. and to guide the whole world. And then the Indian of Shulchan had to do with Lechem Haponim. It was a church of all the Hashpoyas in Gashmias and Afil in Panosa, the Menorah was Aidus to the Jewish Neshamas and to their function in this world. And the whole of Mishkan was Asulim Mikdosh Shochanti B'Seichom. It was the Indian of Gilei Lakus Lamata B'Teich HaNivroim B'Teich HaElam. Ve'ilu said the Ramban, the Mizbach HaKtoiros, or that was Indian purely L'Kvoid Havaya. It was purely for the sake of the covet of the Eibishter Bilvad. And the Ramban is married in another place in Parshat Truma that the whole Mishkan was not a Tzorech Shamayim. It wasn't for the sake of heaven. It wasn't that the Eibishter needed the Mishkan, but it was Tzorech Habriyos. However, this Indian Mizbach HaKtoiros and the offering of the Keteros on that Mizbeach, well, there in it was a special kovid klapi the Eibishter Bilvad. In other words, it was like the Indian of a reyach, a beautiful reyach, which filled the whole Mishkan, Mikoyat, the offering of the Keteros. Or that was the Indian Ki'ilu, that's klapi Shmaya. That's an Indian which is doing for the sake of above. It doesn't have to do with the Bria, it's called Ka. And particularly we notice it on Yom Kippur, when the highest connection between the Eibishter and the Jewish people was going on. The famous Pir and our sages that on Yom Kippur, it's like the three greatest singularities all meet together, the greatest of the human race. Well, that's the Kohen Gadol, the holiest and greatest place on the earth, whether it's the Union from Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the Union of the Yom HaKi Kodesh, B'chol Hazman, well, that's the Union from Yom HaKippurim. So we have there the Union from, as brought down in the Sefer Yetzirah, we have the Union from Olam, Shona V'Nefesh. We have in time and in place and in Ruchnias, or the Union of Nefesh, we have all three at the highest point. So therefore, the Union from at that moment, we also see the Keteros comes into play, because on Yom HaKippurim, the Kohen took with him a whole container called a machtor. Well, he took it in with him, and he made a cloud of the Keteros over the Aron Kodesh, in Bayis Rishon, when there was the Aron Kodesh, or in the time that they were in the Midbar, the Yidden, or the time that the Mishkan was in Eretz Yisrael at the beginning, and there was still the Aron Kodesh, and he made a cloud of the Keteros and put down Barichas in Sefer Vayikra in Pasha Achri Mois, when I get to the Indian of the Aveda of Yom HaKippurim. So we see then that the Indian of the Keteros is somehow expressible of this whole inner link between how the Yidden go up in Asar, even that their whole Indian is only Tzorech Hashem, that they're so bottled to Elakus, that they themselves go up in Asar Madrega, well, that's the Indian of Yom HaKippurim, while the Yid elevates himself completely beyond all connection with the world. And therefore, the Indian for Yom Kippur is not so much a Indian of infliction, even though that word is used in the Torah, but it's like the Rambam writes, at least it's a Indian for Shabbos, that the whole body literally rests from its whole way of functioning, al derech harogim. And therefore it's called Shabbos Shabbosain, the Shabbos of all the Shabbosas. And at that particular moment, when it's the highest possible point, Dafke there, the Keteros comes into play. The Indian of the incense and the Keteros. So from all that we see that the Indian of the Keteros is an amazingly high Indian, expressive of how everything is only for the sake of heaven. And in other words, that the world becomes potel in the Indian of the Metzius and the Rotzen of the Eibishter. And therefore the Ramban says, and the Sapora says a similar thing, that the Sapora writes that the whole usage of making of the Keter, the telling of the making of the Mizbach Keter, at the end of everything, mamish even after the initiation, is also to show that it was a inyan of Kovid to Tfes Kalapi Maila. It was purely for the sake of the Eivishter Kaviyachol, and his Kovid, how it united itself with the Inyan of the Mishkan, which was Be'ikah for the Bria. So based on that, we come today and we find an amazing thing in the Inyan, in this week's Parsha, the commandment to Moshe Rabbeinu in detail how to make the Keturas and what it was made of, and what you might call the constituents that went into the Keturas. So we can't go into all the details. It's amazing parasha all in its own right to deal with all the details of the Keturas. However, we find here one very fascinating detail which will lead us into a whole discussion similar to what we just mentioned, and that is that in Pasuk Lamed Daled begins Vayom Hashem el Moshe kach lecha samim. You must take spices, and then it mentions them notof, ushcheles, v'chilbana. So it's very hard to translate these things into English. I don't know exactly what their English translation is. If you got the English translations, then they've got all sorts of fancy words in English. I myself really don't know what the heck exactly how one would translate them into English. But when we get to Chilbana, we see that there's Notov and there's Chelas and there's Chilbana and then Samim. What Rashi says that means other things which are not mentioned by name, they have to be connected to the same number of what we mentioned up to now, etc., etc. So altogether we get 11 incenses or spices that go into the whole Keturas. And one of them is this thing called Chelbanah. Now this Chelbanah is in English, I see it translated as Gelbanom. Gelbanom. Well, I must admit that doesn't make me a great deal wiser exactly what it is, but it's not a pure or nice smelling thing. It's a spice or a plant which gives off a not pleasant smell at all. So therefore comes on Rashi. Rashi addresses himself to the word Chelbanah, which means, as we said, Gelbanom, or if I'm not really familiar with the these in Yonim, but so he says, Boisem Sherechoi Ra. This is a spice, and he calls it a boisem. A boisem means a perfume. But he said this is a perfume that its reich is ra. It's got a very bad smell. The kohen loy gelbana. You see, that's in Yiddish gelbanan is in English gelbanom or gelbanom. Whatever that may exactly be. Umanoa hakosu bein samamone akteres. And yet, nonetheless, the Pasuk counted it amongst all the other spices of the Keturas. Now, it was counted amongst the spices of the Keturas, meaning that it was one of the spices. But it's interesting that Rashi puts his emphasis on the fact that it was counted. He doesn't so much emphasize that it was actually offered up. I mean, it was offered up together amongst the other, but he indicates particularly that it was counted and reckoned amongst all the Samamone Akteires. Lelamdeinu, that comes to teach us something. Shelo yekal b'eineinu, it shouldn't be easy in our eyes. In other words, we shouldn't treat it lightly, should we? You have to be looking in the right in the place where we're learning. Shelo yekal be'eineinu letzarif imanu ba'agudas ta'an yoseinu utfiloseinu. So Rashi said that it should be easy in our eyes to join together with us in the gathering together. Aguda means like coming all together. In the joining together or the assembly of our fasts and our prayers. Es Poisha Yisrael, that we should join up together with us, the deliberate sinners of the Jewish people. A Poisha Yisrael is an expression in the Gemara. What that means, somebody, not just a careless person, but a get to mitzvahs, but he's he's a deliberate sinner, a poisheya. In other words, he's a bit of a not particularly tasty character when it comes to Torah and mitzvahs. Nonetheless, says Rashi, it shouldn't be easy in our eyes or shouldn't be a contemptuous thing to join together with others in our grouping for when we fast and when we pray. These Poisha Yisrael, She'iyu nimnim imanu, that they should be counted together with us in the minyan. In other words, in the group that's praying, they should be counted together with us. In other words, that whenever we are having a tainis, a fast, or we're davening, there must be some sada shova between a fast and davening. Well, that's going to be an interesting inquiry. Whenever we get together to fast or to daven in the shul or in wherever it may be, then we should see to add into our aguda, into our whole grouping, into our whole minyan or whatever we like to call it, these poishayis, well, that they should be counted together with us. In other words, not that we'll just do a favor and we'll be what we are. I know we say now, well, we've got a whole, assembly of the Jewish people. We'll let in a few of these guys that want to sit at the side, and also be present, and maybe it might help them in some way. We'll have Rachmanisov say, and we'll let them in, and we'll let them sit. No, they have to be nim imanu. They have to be counted together with us, and they have to be in the actual minyan itself. They have to be in the aguda. What the aguda means are coming together and a joining together of different groups, as we'll see as we go along. What that word aguda may be implied. Edefa. That's why it is that in this Ketores, there was reckoned amongst all the Ketores, we see a reckoning and putting into the minyan of the Ketores, this gelbanam, which is not a pleasant smelling thing, baklau. So, he got something that was supposed to produce the most beautiful rayach in the world. That's what the Ketores was. It was the most unbelievable incense, and they say that it was very difficult to take it for its unbelievable beauty and power of sweet savor. And he put this smelly thing into it. What happened to it? We have to say that it was nerpach, and it got swept up, and it was reversed in such a way that it joined the good effect, and somehow or another it must have had a good effect on the whole Indian. The Altar brings in Tanya over there, Beneget, in chapter 27, he brings Beneget to the Beinani. And he says that there's certain foods which are just good, lechatchila, nice foods and tasty foods. And then he said there's certain foods that they put almost bitter things into the mixture in order to make it really have a tremendously powerful effect on the Adam who eats it. And that's the Indian for the Beinan. He's got this amazing power that he's still bitter, but he changes, he's bitter, and his bitter becomes toiv with the ganze Harichas is brought out in Perek Kov Tzai. That's we have to say that this is a Dova HaAduim Lazir. It's a similar concept that the Indian of the Gelbanam Davke adds into the sweetness of the Reach of the Ketay. So, we should do it. What sort of an Indian is that? So, as it's also where did Rashi get that from? I mean, that's in the midst of these long technical discussions where he makes about all the different combinations, and later he brings the price that we say every day in davening, and he teaches out how we learn all these different Yud Aleph spices with the whole thing. All of a sudden Rashi puts in this amazing statement about Tiny Seinu Utfilah, Tfilah Seinu. So we have to say that Rashi is basing himself on a Gemara in Masechta Kalisus. But there's a Gemara also. It does a very similar thing in the midst of a long discussion. That price that what we say every day, Ptuma Aktoiras Keitad, and we say the Indian at the saying at the Ketoiras in our prayers, then we quote this price at great length. And so the Gemara goes into all sorts of details in reference to that price, and then after a long discussion about different inyonim, all of a sudden the Gemara says, Omer Reb Chana Bar Bizno, Reb Chana Bar Bizno, Omer Reb Shimon Chasido. Well, he was a Tana, or maybe at the time of the Amoraim of Dukta, that he was a Tana, Reb Shimon Chasido. the whole tinies she'ein bo mipoisha Yisrael eino tinies. Any fast that doesn't contain within it the deliberate sinners of the Jewish people is not a fast. As they said Rabbi Chana Bavizna in the name of Shimon Chassida, Shaharei, and he brings a proof, Achelbena Reichel Ra. The chelbena is a very, as we said, bad smelling thing. Umanoa Kosuv im Samamoneach Tev. Nonetheless, a posik mentioned it with the Samoniach Tev. That's a sign, that whenever you make a tinus, if it doesn't contain Poisha Yisrael in the people who are fasting, then it's not a tinus. He said, what about all the people fasting? Now, it's not a tinus if you don't have these Poisha Yisrael there. It's not considered that anybody is really making the tinus properly. Abaya Omar, Abaya says, Nehocha. He said, I don't learn it from this whole Indian with the Samoniach Torahs. He said, I learn it from, there's a pasuk in Amos Anovi, where it's written, Va'agudosei al Eretz Yesodah, that the Eibishter founded his Aguda, how do you call it, his assembly on the earth. And he founded it on the earth, but Yesodah means he founded it and stood firmly. So if you look up in the pasuk, we bring that pasuk in Pirkei Avos, it's brought down in Pirkei Avos in a place, but maybe we might even mention that as we go along. It's written over there that he says that the Eibishter builds the heavens according to their levels and goes up from one level to the other in the heavens. And Agudasi al Eretz Yesodah, but his Aguda, he assembles and how do you call it, foundates it on the earth. So Rashi brings over there in Amos, Rashi says over there that Aguda is referring to the created peoples. And I say the Metzudas David is referring to mankind down here in the earth. That if they are all together, if they're in a form of an Aguda and they're all joined together, so then the Eibishter founds them firmly on the earth, implying that if they're not all together, and they don't have the ability to found themselves firmly on the earth. In other words, that the Eibishter put them in the world for that purpose. So coming on Rashi over here, and Rashi refers to that here in the Gemara here. Rashi refers to this statement on the part of Abaya Dafke. He pays attention to that pasuk that Agudosei. Rashi says, Mashma shekulon biyachad. If everybody is together, Oz al Eretz Yesodah. If everybody's together and they're all one Aguda, they're all joined together, then the Eibishter founds them on the ground. But if they're not, then he doesn't give them a firm status on the earth. And that's firstly what Rashi implies over there in Amos, and what most of the great Meforshim learn one way or another. They learn that the Eibush didn't found mankind and the living creatures of this world on the ground the way he did found the heavens, unless they're all joined together and they're all Aguda Achaz. And therefore we find in Shmuel, also in Shmuel Hanovi, when it comes to the time that David HaMelech became king over the Jewish people, it's well known that David HaMelech at the beginning was a king only of Hebron, and the family of Shaul HaMelech was still kings in the rest of Eretz Yisrael. And only after a whole change and a whole clash took part between, so then all the Jewish people accept on themselves the rule of David HaMelech, and they say that we take you as our king, we want you to be the king, and we'll all be an Aguda Achas. As they state, we'll all join together. We'll all be like one united assembly under your rule. So we see this idea of Aguda implying a pulling together of different facets and different parties, because not all human beings are the same, as we are very easily able to observe. We notice that not all human beings are the same, and not all human beings react in the same way, etc., etc. I mean, I suppose it would be very boring if everybody was the same. But nonetheless, the purpose is that everything is good. People have got to unite together, and they've got to form this union of a aguda. Now that's what Abaya says. So we have to ask ourselves the question: what's the difference between Reb Chana bar Bizna and Abaya? Because Reb Chana bar Bizna, he learns from the Samone Arteres, and Abaya learns that Kol Taina Shein Boy Mi Poisha Yisrael. You don't really learn from the Torah so much, but you learn from the Posik Vagudosei Al Eretz Yisrael. So there must be some point there must be some, what they call a pitch line in the difference between these two authorities. But they differ that way in the Gemara. And we notice, now we've seen the Lashon of the Gemara, then we notice that Rashi differs the Lashon of the Gemara quite considerably. Rashi says it comes to teach us that which should be easy in our eyes. We shouldn't overlook, we shouldn't hold it contemptuously, to add together in our Aguda, the Poish Yisrael, b'tayni seinu u'b'tfiloi seinu, both in our tiniest and in our prayers. Now the Gemara didn't mention anything about prayers. The Gemara said, Kol tayni she'einu ein boi Poish Yisrael, einu tainis. Doesn't mention the Indian from davening. So where did Rashi get into this business of davening? And also, it would appear from the Gemara that Kol tainis she'ein boi Poish Yisrael, einu tainis, or that would tend to indicate that it's a chiyuv. You have to go very specially to make sure you got these Poish Yisrael in your minyan, and you've got to count them together with yourselves, and then it's a tainis. But Rashi says that it shouldn't be easy in your eyes. You shouldn't just contemptify it. Meaning you're not mechuyev to do it, but it's a good thing, and you should look to do it. It shouldn't be a contemptuous thing. In other words, it's not really a chiyuv, Rashi would imply. I mean, on the Pirush on the Chumash, it seems that Rashi is just saying it's up to you, but if you take the advice of the Torah, then don't take it too lightly. Try very much to see that these people be together with you. Ve'ila po in the Gemara would imply that if we don't have them, we don't have the whole thing. And that's what we said. Our people are fasting, they're fasting. If the Poish Yisrael are not there, our people are still fasting. So the Gemara said, no, Kol tainis ain tiny. It's gone. It's like a waste of effort if you haven't got these Poish years. Yes, sure, well, and it doesn't appear that Abaya differs that. Abaya just said he gets it from another, he learns it from another Pasuk, that everything is fixed the way the Eibishter will want it if we're a good acha. And you notice on Rosh Hashanah, we also say to the Eibishter, v'niyeh kulanu aguda achas, la'aseh yisv'tzein in the Shemoneh Esrei from Rosh Hashanah. We say the same Lashon, we should all be aguda acha. I'm going to ask the Shaila, what is the difference? So we could say like this. It comes along the Maral Miprag. And the Maral Miprag says, what is the milah of pulling in Poisha Yisrael into a meaning where Yidden are fasting? He said, what are you fasting about? Why the cloud do we fast? So he said, we fast because we want rachamim from the Eibishter. And we want he should have mercy on them. And then we come together and we fast. We should be matching rachamim and mercy from above. And that's one of the main reasons for a fast. So he says, what is Mo'er Rachamim L'mayla? When the Eibishter sees a lot of good people and they all come together and they say, oh listen, maybe you can help us. The Eibishter said, where's the panosa? You guys are all good guys anyway. Where do I have any real panosa from this whole gathering? Says the Maharal Miprag, that if everybody's just good people, then they don't have the power so much to be Mo'er Rachamim. So don't be disappointed. I mean, that doesn't mean that you can't get together as many good people as possible. That's a very good thing. But he said to be Mo'er, the type of Rachamim that you need on a Yom Tainis, then he said you have to have people. What is the mile of a Tainis? Why do we fast B'klal? He said on a Tainis you had to call it a Machnia Esatzmach. Called Hachna'ah. How would you say Hachna'ah? Like self-surrender, like self-giving away. giving away of yourself, hachnoah. So he said, what more hachnoah, what more giving away of yourself, and more what Chassidus would call bittul hayeshes, that you have on a tainis, the more you're likely to get rachamim ravim min hashamayim. So he said, a tzaddik is already kule hachnoah. A tzaddik is a yid, he can't really find himself any place to be machnia anymore. He's been machnia everything. He said, however, when a poisheya Yisrael fast together with everybody, he also asked the Eibush to help. Well, that's a hachnoah she'ein kamoya. You can't compare that type of hachnoah, that giving away of the self, and that bittul of the yeshes, to any other bittul. That's the highest bittul yeshes that could be. Therefore, dafki, you have to be mitzalef to the poisha Yisrael together with us, because alidei, their hachnoah, they're giving away themselves, they bring, and it's dafki more in their schus, that we bring the inyan farach. So we bring down a inyan farach. Hij zegt, hij komt de moraal met Praag. The fees komt is that we have to have this inyan of the reach ra, of the chelbana, because when that word gives itself away, well, that arouses a tremendous inyan of rachamim lamaila. Like we said, in a way, that's already a sign that reach ra is turning into a tremendous reach tov, because it brings out a secret and a sword that ordinary, in inverted commas, good people didn't have. And Dafki Alidei, the poisheya, the not good person, or as we call him a Rosha, and he gives himself away, he brings down a tremendous rachamim no maida. We could say that's the Ike Kwetch of Rabbi Chana Babizna. Or Rabbi Chana Babizna, he says that the whole inyan of a tainus is because it's rachamim. When you bring in these poishim, then you get to the mokeh or rachamim b'yem. And therefore it becomes a emes a tainus. Or then it's a tainus the way it's really meant to be. Mashiach, really good people, it could be, they deny themselves a lot of the time. So, on a fast day they deny themselves a bit more. But it's not a chiddush dover. It's not like the famous marshal in Siddur, the tzipor hamidoberes. It's not like the bird that talks. It's not negative the nature and the teva legam. And therefore, we could say that is the point of the Reb Chanan Babizna, that a tainus is lafizeh, come to say that it's not a tainus, or lafizeh, it would be what we could describe as a chiyuv, to bring together, a necessity, to bring together all the ishim that you could get, literally, or to make sure that in you, when you have a tainus, that there should be mipoisha Yisrael, but it would be a requirement, and a chiyuv. And that is the fact that that's not so simple is stressed by the Pirush of the Marshal here on the Gemara. Masechet Ki Sisa, well, the Marshal goes a bit to town on the Gemara. He's a little child, and he says, "What's this Poisha Yisrael?" He said, "What if these guys that are the mamish the whole time don't do anything? All of a sudden we mix them in to our minyan." So he said that therefore the lashon of the Gemara, or the lashon of Rashi, is also the Gemara is l'tzarev. What l'tzarev means to bring, add them on also. So the Marshal says you're only talking about where you have a minyan of tzaddikim, of good people. You have a full minyan, and it's all, anyway, a proper minyan. Then you can let these guys join in. Not that they're real, and that's the type of l'tzarev. After what you got already a complete minyan, then you can allow them to come in, which means that they, as it were, they benefit more from the prayer of the tzaddikim than they actually add to the situation. Just that there's a extra, what you might call, dearness in the eyes of the Eibush, that even these people are also being what you might call part of the deal. Not that they're the Ika part of the deal. The Ika part of the deal is the Eido, Shlema, at least a Sorah. And these people just being, as it were, they're adding an extra time, Lador. As we start to the Marfa. Well, that's a little bit sharp. But come to the Maral with Praga, no, on the contrary, they're the ones that cause the whole Ika Rachman. They're the whole kvetch. Biladeim ain't a tainus for them. Because the whole in a tainus as we said, is to be mamshicha arachim miyuchadim, and that can only be when there's this tzipah midaberes. There's this Indian of people giving themselves away completely, and the Rasha does that more than what the tzaddik does, if he joins in. And it follows that according to the way the Maral learns it, then it's a chiyuv to have these people. It's a necessity, and it's nogeya to the very Indian of the tainis. Otherwise, it's not really a tainis, and that's the lashon of the Chana Bavizna called tainis she'ein boy mipoy Yisrael ein a tain. So comes along the Marami Prague, and he does pay attention to the fact that Rashi mentioned the Indian for tefillah, but not here, in another place, because he's got a pirush of the on the Agadatas, of the Shas. The Marami Prague also wrote a whole series of amazing chidushim on the Agadatas of the Shas. If you buy a full set of the Marami Prague, you can get them. I don't know if you can buy them separately anymore, but if you buy a whole big set that they sell, so this guy, he comes around sometimes, he sells them. I don't know if he still does. You can get a whole big box of all the morals for him. This long, cost you a few around each kulam. But amongst all those for him, there's all these wondrous pirushim that the Maral wrote on the Agatas of the Shas. So over there, I looked up a sefer. I've got the sefer on, but I couldn't find the sefer. Sometimes it's hard in my collection to find the sefer one, but I found a sefer what he brings down the Maral in the Chidushi Agadah. So I found the book of sefer. He writes this. So the Maral Prague over there, he writes that he doesn't agree with what Rashi writes in the Chumash. He said, why did Rashi get this business of the tefillahs? He said that a good is tefillah seinov, a tiny seinov. He said the Gemara only talks about tiners. And called tiners, ain't by my boys, so ain't a tiner. And over there he writes a slightly different idea. And he says over there that the whole meaning of a tinus is that you break your yetzer hara, that you fight against your yetzer hara. So you want to eat the whole day and you don't allow it. Yeah, that's like fighting the what we call in citizen Efsha Bahami, yetzer hara. And he said a Rasha is somebody he doesn't fight his yetzer hara, he just gives into his yetzer hara the whole time. If he joins in on a fast, then that's a big breaking of the yetzer hara. That causes the tinus to be a emes time. So over there, he's talking more about the actual tinus, not so much the result of the tinus. And what is a tinus, or how do you define a tinus? That people are giving away their yetzer hara, they're fighting their yetzer hara, and they're not eating. If a Rasha does that, then that's a big fight on his part, similar to what he said in Rashi on the Chumash, but a slightly different quetch. And therefore, that's an emes tinus. You've got people really fasting. But that makes it into an emes tinus. And therefore he doesn't agree with Rashi. It's got nothing to do with davening. He said davening is another thing altogether. He said davening is not fighting your yetzer hara. He said davening is the most wondrous thing. The Maral Prague said, who doesn't want to daven? Everybody wants to daven to the Eivishter, to talk to the Eivishter, have a kesher with the Eivishter. He said, for that you don't need to fight your yetzer hara. I respect it. The Maral Prague, you don't have to fight your yetzer hara, do you? But you have to fight your yetzer tov, or your nefesh achiyunius, not sleep during shuri. Edifar, I didn't want to call it the yetzer hara. Shira told Chetuvim Chasro, we don't have anything to do with the yetzer hara. Edifar is good to us. But however, if you look carefully, when the Maral Prague comments here on Rashi, on the Torah, he mentions rachamim. And rachamim is what comes out of the tinus. And over there in his Chidushi Agadah, he's talking about what's the definition of tinus mitzad the people who are fasting. Mitzad the misanim, mitzad the fasters. He said, what is the emes and tinus when you fight the yetzer hara? Over here he talks about the toitzah, the outcome of a tinus, and he describes this idea of giving yourself away and surrender, and then he said the outcome is rachamim. So here he's talking more about the outcome. So maybe we could say in a loose way that maybe the Maral would maybe go for tefillahs as well. He doesn't comment so much about it here as he does over there. He goes to town against Rashi. But he wrote this at a different time, so maybe he slightly adjusted his opinion, because it's brought in the Gemara that what is davening? Davening is bakoshes rachamim. We look at the Gemara. In Kamar Mekaymes, you'll find that the Gemara says that the Ike Inyan of Tefillah is what we call bakoshes rachamim. That you need rachamim from the Eivishter for everything that you pray for, including to have a kesher with the Eivishter. For that you also need rachamim. And I remember the whole outcome of davening is rachamim. So maybe the Maharal Prague would agree that we could maybe bring in tefillah as well, not just tainis. But over there he's talking only about the mile of a tainis and the mile of the people fasting in a time. However, we could say that his Ika Inyan is the Inyan of the tainis and the mile of the tainis and the avoid of giving away the self in a tainis. Well, that fits more or less, we could say, into the Inyan of Reb Chana Babizna. However, if we look carefully at it, why did Abai have to come in and say Mehocha? What did he prefer with this Inyan he learned out from another posse? He didn't learn from the Keteras. He learned out from Agdosei al Eretz Yisoda. There's always some basis, and also it's written B'Loshem Machlekes. Abai Oma, that's a Loshem Machlekes. He differs with Reb Chana Babizna. So what's he different? What's wrong if we learn from the Keteras? There must be some other Inyan and some other Shitta in Abaya that made him say Abaya Oma, that he differs. And he says, no, we learn it from Agudosi al Eretz Yesoda. So if we look in there's a Gemara Masechta Menachos where the Gemara talks about the Arba Minim in the Lulav, but you guys are familiar with that, no doubt. So when we put we have to tie them all together. And you know that some of them over there represent the more simple people amongst the Yidden. For example, the Arovis, well, that could be these Poishi Yisrael even, because that represents people that don't have any Torah and they don't have any interest. Lo ta'am v'lo re'ah. So over there the Gemara begins with a very fascinating statement. It's not in Sukkah, but it's in Masechta Menachos. Over there the Gemara says that we see that two of the things over there bear fruits and two of them don't really bear fruits. Even though the Hadass does have a sort of little berry to it, but it's not really a fruit. It's the Esrog and the Lulav, they have fruits, because the Lulav is how do you call it, a date tree. So they bear fruit. But even the Hadass and the Arois, they don't bear fruit. So the Gemara says that Elisha Noishim Peiros Tluyim v'kshurim im Elisha Einanozim. The kilo, the people who bring fruits are dependent on those who don't bring fruits in order for the whole thing to be a proper mitzvah. We've got to have both those who bring fruits and those who don't, and they've got to be together. So therefore, there's one opinion over there that says that the binding of the lulav together, what we call aguda salulav, that's called aguda, what's called eged halulav, the joining of them together. One opinion over there holds that that's a chiyuv, and if you don't join them together, then you won't makayim the mitzvah. Now Rashi's mavaya over there that according to that person, once again, he said this whole meaning of aguda, and he said aguda means where different peoples come together in one unification, and the Gemara brings the same pasuk agudosi al eretz. So that this pasuk here from Amos. Rashi says that if there's not everybody together, then the Abishah didn't found anything on the earth. He didn't make the human race together on the earth. That killed there without foundation. Very strong Rashi writes over there. If you don't have everybody together, if it's not agudose, that loyal eretz yisoda. And he said that's the opinion that holds that you have to be ma'agadi the lulav. So then there's another opinion the Gemara brings. Two other Tanoim in a Brisa, and the Gemara says that there's one Tanoim that Klal doesn't have to be tied together. Klal, you just take all the 4 minutes and just hold them together in the Shachar. They don't have to be tied together. And then brings the Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon say that it's a mitzvah. How do you call it? It's because there's a pasuk Zekeli Vanvehu, and we tie them all together. So we look nicer, and it's nicer, it's more beautiful that way. And therefore you should do it. It's not that it's a chiyuv, but it's a beautiful thing to do it. It's like a hidur and a mitzvah in the sense of a good thing. So we paskin according to the Rabban. We don't paskin as mamish achiyu. Well, the Fizek comes to is that the one who holds it as achiyu, he says, agudos yaler yisoda, it has to be, otherwise the Eibush doesn't keep the world going. Klaumish. And then the Rabbanim say, look, it's a good thing. It's a tova teiv, and it's a mitzvah, keli van vehu, to have all the other things tied together. The eged is a great thing. So for that we see that this pasuk agudose al eretz yisod in that sugya in the sector Manochas is used indicating how all things come together and they form a oneness. They form an inyan of yichud and oneness together, and that's what the Eibush wanted when he made the world. Otherwise, he didn't really want a world. He didn't want people to be all shlomza, one with the other. He wanted a united human races, you might say. Very interesting chap. Particularly by Yidden of Zichar, the Eibush didn't want Cholila, the union von Heder, Ha'achtus, lacking of Achtus. He wanted everything should be together, and that's the union of the Eged, it should be all bound together. So from that we see that this concept of Aguda is where you take separate entities that they don't look to be the same thing. The Eloisin Peders, Elo Enamoisin Peders. It's different types of fruitfulness, and there's some people they don't bring Peders. Maybe it's almost not within their capacity to do so, and yet nonetheless they've all got to be together, and they've got to be tied together. They've got to be united by a koyach which is holding them together, and that's called Eged or Aguda. That's called the Inyan van Aguda. Lafise contains that oneness is like the Ikar which is working here. And therefore the power of the Lulav, according to Pnimis also, is the oneness Shibadova. It's the whole Inyan of taking the whole of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and bringing everything together in the form of Actus Gemura, Actus Peshuta, and that expresses itself in the human beings of the world. And it's Nipshit B'Teich Alev, you have to take the Lulav down. Lalev, and Adonse. Arichas HaMavur B'Chsidah B'Kesher, let's say. Never come to is that the Ikir here is Actus, and the Eged is indicatory of the Inyan of everything coming together in the form of Actus. But Lafise, we could say, that maybe Abaya differs with the whole concept in a way, even though he goes the same way as Rav Chana Bar Bizna, but he differs in the sense that he doesn't hold that the Raya is from the fact that we bring people together, and this one has got more koyach than the other, therefore we have to have these, and so on and so forth. He says the Ikka is the oneness, where you get everybody together, and you make out of a ribui, an aguda, in other words, you bring them all tied together and all linked together, and they function as one inyan. Oh, that's what he said. That's the Ikka here. The Ikka of bringing in the Poisha Israel into the Ketairas is very important because of the Achtas of Bador, the one. And we'll soon see why maybe he would hold that way. We can soon come to an Akuda in Zainsfora. And therefore he holds that the Ikka Pura here is the Achtas, and if everything is in a form of Achtas, then that causes the Ikka success of the Tainas, of the Indian Tainas. So how come then the Rashi brings in here the Inyan from Tefillah? Now I looked in the Rabbeinu B'chai, what's going on, he was from the very early Rishonim, Rabbeinu B'chai HaRishon, maybe it was Hashem, there were two Rabbeinu B'chai, called Rabbeinu B'chai HaRishon, Rabbeinu B'chai HaSheni. Anyway, in this Pirush HaTorah, he brings many inyonim, Bedimian, Penimis HaTorah, not just Bedimian, Mamish inyonim shal Penimis HaTorah. And he brings down the whole quote that Rashi brings, or he brings it slightly different. And he says just the word Aguda, Agudoseinu. He just says that there has to be Agudoseinu Gam Mipoisha Yisrael, the Im Heim Betoch Agudoseinu, said Kilo Rotzen Hashem, or said Nilzel Lifnei Hashem. He didn't mention not a tainis, not davening, he just says Agudoseinu, our group together. So I thought, why did he mention just Agudoseinu? Why didn't he say tainis or davening? The Gemara talks about tainis. So therefore we could suggest that the Rabbeinu Bechaya is indicating that if you go according to the Shitta from Abaye, even though he's talking about Chanabah business board, even from Tainis, or he's bringing down a more general point, which is indicative of the whole concept of actors. If it's the inyan for actors, then we can also bring in the inyan for tefillah. That's what maybe Rashi saw here. And therefore both Rabbeinu Bechaya and Rashi are basing themselves more on the Shitta of Abaye rather than the Shitta from Reb Chanabah Bizna, even though those are zicher that you can't completely count out the inyan of the Tainis, because the Gemara starts off and Mishyachis to the inyan of Tainis. And if we come and the inyan from oneness, actors, then we can get into the inyan from Tefillah, pink to say with the inyan from Tainis. And it's just two different types of the same aim. And ultimately speaking, it's basically the same Nakuda, just that the inyan from Tainis is a Eish Rotz and Miyuchad. When Yidden fast, as the Rebbe says in many of the famous secrets that he said on the fast days, the Rebbe, what he called the Divrei Kivushim, the Rebbe stresses that a fast, since people fast, and they give themselves away in addition to their normal giving away, in the form of a Tainis, and that makes a very augurous moment. It makes a special augurous, how do you call it, special Eish Rotzen by the Eibishter. But Einachanami, the inyan from Tefillah and Tainis is a very close one to the Adeh. And what is the inyan that links them together? This inyan of Aguda Achaz. And therefore on Rosh Hashanah, when we want to prepare everything on Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah is the day where we're out for, how do you call it, everything. Then we say, V'niyah Aguda Achaz, the last is Ritzain Chobalev of Sholem. That's one of the last pinch lines in the Tefillah Shema Esrei, and then we say Baruch Atah Hashem. The whole inyan, the self bracha, the brachas of the Shema Esrei. That's what the Yidden said to David, that Niya Aguda Achas Kulana will all be one to take on the Malchus based of it. It's a similar inyan. The Rebbe, the Tzemach in the famous Maimon, אתה לא יכול להציג מישהו באמצע השיר. חייבים לחכות עד סוף השיר. אתה תחכה עד סוף השיר. The Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, brings down in the mitzvahs Ahavas Yisrael, and also he mentions it in the Shorosh Mitzvah Hatzukah Rabiki, he mentions it in Ahavas Yisrael, in Derech Mitzvah Yisacha, that he writes over there, before davening, we have to say, Hareinu Makabel Alai Mitzvahs Aseh Shel V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha. That you can't daven unless you be Makabel on yourself. Now the Alter Rebbe brings that in Shulchan Aruch. And the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch, there's a Chayiv Kol Echad L'Kabel V'atzmai Ahavas Yisrael. Prior to the L'Kabel on himself, the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael, Koydem Tfilas. In the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe. Although there he brings a slightly different lashon, but in the Siddur, you'll look and you'll see at the beginning of the Siddur, he brings down Nochain Loima. It's correct to say every day, prior to davening, right at the beginning of the davening, Hareini Makabel Alai Mitzvahs Aseh Shel V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha. You have to say out loud, I take on myself the Mitzvahs Aseh, the positive command from V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamoicha. So you just write the Alter Rebbe. But there in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe writes, you have to do it, and here he writes Nochain Loima. It's a good thing and a right thing to do it. Why did he say? Well, he said Chayav, and here he said Nochain. It's a bright thing, and he brings that from the Arizal. As they state in the lashon of the Arizal in the Pri-Eitz Chaim, the Arizal brings also as a lashon that it's a dova teiv and a dova nochain. Before you daven, you should unite yourself with the ganze Klal Yisrael. Alidei Kabbalas mitzvahs Ahavas Yisrael, after L'Reacha Kamoicha, then you can daven. So the Tzemach Tzedek says that from word. So he says that the whole inyan of Achdus of Yidden is Nogeya in the Etch inyan from Tefillah. And he said the Eibush Kaviyoko almost can't answer our tefillahs if there's not Achta. And he brings out there the famous marshal at a king. He wanted to be gazed for him, Tevim, and make a whole new wonder Seder for the people. And he went out into the country to see how things were going before he made this big new privilege he was going to give the people all sorts of new inyonim, Latayvus Medina that he was going to do. He gets out of the Medina and he sees that everybody's quarreling one with the other and other slogans, and there's no political unity, and the king hears all the reports, so he says, well, I need to bother with these people, let them make do as what they go, let them slogans up, Why should I be concerned with them? But he saw that all the subjects were all joined together, Ba'achtas, and they were all one people, and they're incomparably stronger, and then it's incomparably better to deal with them, because as they bring to the Bekitzer, he brings over there that without Achtas and without Avos Yisrael, Amiti is, he said the whole Indian from davening is not really a davening. I state that. Cool. And he brings out a whole Indian from the story about Hillel, the Ger came to Hillel, the Gemara was like to Shabbos. But he brings out a whole piyuv, and I can't get involved in that now because we've got to keep moving. But there's a whole big piyuv over there in the Lashon of the Gemara where Hillel said to him, something, what's hateful to you, don't do to other people. And that's the whole Kolatena Kula, and the rest of it is Apirus. And so the famous shot is, why did he say it in the negative? Why didn't he say, be Mekayim, be your half to l'recha? Why did he say, don't do what you don't like being done to you to other people? And so the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, is Mavaya that in it. He's Mavaya, why is it all in the negative in the Gemara, not in the positive? Oh, this is not the place to get involved in the whole business. Suffice it to say that he says that without Emerson Achta, and without you having taken on yourself Avos Yisrael as a condition in your tefillah, then the whole tefillah is not going to work. I state that. And from that we see that Agudose al Eretz Yesodo is a barrier is being machadish yirainim, that it's the actus which is nageya, both to the tiny. So Rashi says, if that's nageya to a tiny, then it's nageya to tefillah. Yeah, because the yin of tefillah requires actus just like a tiny stuff. Because without that, and tefillah is a thing which we're always asking for achamim. The yin of tinus is an extra yin which causes an extra eis rotzen, but you can't demand of people all the time that they fast. The Rebbe always stressed that you can't fast and you can't demand people to fast any more than the actual fast, which are all Shulchan Aruch, and the Baal Shem Tov was very much against any fast whatsoever, except for those which are mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. Kommt es, he said, that the inner of tinus is a dover miyuchad in davening. Aber the ik is davening alles kolasma. Agudosei al eretz yesodo is nager in the whole Indian for davening. And the far Rashi saw in the Shitta from Abaye is slightly different than the Shitta of Rav Chana bar Bizna, that there's a all-embracing point in his Shitta, that he learns it not from the Keteras, he learns it dafki from the Pasuk Agudos al Eretz Yesodo, that can also embrace other inyanim, the Hainu Tefillah, not Stam, but then they become mamish one and the same. They become one and the same inyan. And that's what the Rabbeinu Bechaya writes, that the whole inyan of the Gemara is only about Agudoseinu. He doesn't mention what a tain is, what a dam. He says it's all Nageya, but Agudoseinu. I have to quote the Gemara exactly. What's Agudoseinu? No, he learns that Abaya had Machadish given, that he brought about a whole new view of the matter, that everything is Nageya the Akta. And that's all Gemara. The Rebbeinu Bechaya took out of that Gemara that there was the Inif and After stuff. And what is Nogay is the Aguda, not so much the actual fasting, the not eating what they're going to do. Everything is mistave, and that's the Gemara Menachos. I feel according to the Rabbanan, what it's not mamish achiyu, but zeh kei liv vehu. That's the beauty of the Eibishter, where everybody's tied together. And elu tluyim Ba'elu, which means that the esrog, which got all the milas, doesn't really have any shleimus as a mitzvah from the Meibishter unless he's tied together. Well, at least we don't tie that's a pillar. We don't tie the esrog together, but we hold him together. We don't tie him together. That's another interesting child. Why don't we tie the esrog also? Well, upon him, he's not, unless he's together with these, and the other three have to be tied. And if they're not tied, then Einachanami, it's not a mitzvah b'shleimus. I feel according to the Rabbanan. What's the feast? We come to a whole new view of the situation. That this, what Rashi is being mavaya, agudas tefiloseinu v'agudaseinu, is not the lashon of the Gemara, but Rashi saw that hidden in the Gemara, particularly b'das Abaye. And that's Shittas Rashi. In Achumish, where he tries to bring how these inyonim ashar to the pshutei shel mikra in a way that the lashonis of Chazal mavaya what is really the emphasis of pshat aposhet or the pasuk. And in order to understand that, in order to sort of grasp that in a way that really brings it into our knowledge and into our minds, we have to come on to what's written in Chassidus Chabad. And it's well known that sometimes Davki through the Indian of Pnimis HaTorah and the Birim of the Yonim, how they occur in Pnimis HaTorah, the whole thing makes greater in a very common sense. It simply adds up in a way that even the Koyach HaSeichel or Koyach HaSvara is able to be Teufus the Indian B'tuch Ta'am. And now we go back to what we mentioned at the beginning of the Shir, that the whole Mizbach HaKteros was at the end of all the other Inyanim, even after the initiation. Because that indicated the Inyan of what you might call Koved Hashem, as the Rambam called it. Inyan from Yichud, but the Eibishter purely mitzidoim, as you might say. So what is it in Akuta? And Akuta is that we find the Ketoiras brought down in Chassidus as a Dova Nifla Hafla V'Fem. And the word Ketoiras is based on a word Kuf Tet Reish, Katar or Katar, which is an Aramic root. It's not a Hebrew root, it's a root in Aramic, and it means a kesher. It means like joining together or binding together. And we find that it's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh when I get to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Right before he passed away, I don't know what it means he passed away, but anyway, whatever happened over there, before that particular moment, then it's brought down that Rashbi, that he said, that Bechad Katira is Katana Bey. He said that with one knot, literally, with one binding, with one knot, I've been tied up into him, meaning the Eibishter, all my life. With one knot. Bechad Katira is Katana. And then he says, Bei Achido, Bei Lahito. That's been in him how he's one and only, and it's in him how he's the flame, the fire, and that assumes, he consumes everything. So the whole beer, instead of Pekitza, what it boils down to is that Rabbi Shimon said that his type of kesher in the Eibishter wasn't a thing Alpi Seichel over time, but it was a kesher mitzad the one and onlyness, Bechad Katira. Is katana, and that means Yechida Shebenev, the highest Inyan in our souls, where we're one thing with the Eibishter B'Lavoch. In other words, Afilu Rachmanin Itlan, you fall down the drain and you become a Posheya Yisrael, or you can't take away the Yechida. The Yechida is always there, and it's always Yechida L'Yachdoch, it's always one with the Eibishter B'Tachas HaYichud. Melech HaMashiach points out on many occasions that there's even higher than Yechida, because the Yechida is a name. A name is also a certain level. Or the Etzim Neshama of a Yid is even higher than Yechida. And that's always B'yichud and always B'kesher with the Eibishter, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Perikov Talid. The most amazing thing that even if you do an Aveda, you're doing the Eibishter's will, or at that particular moment, your Nefesh Elokis is bound up with the Eibishter. That's the most amazing thing. And what you do is you drag Nefesh Elokis absolutely against their will into the mud. Come away. Everybody's familiar with the last portion of Perikov Talid. It's mind-boggling, the emotion that he uses right there. However, according to Isla Fisa, Katoires is indicatory of the etzem and neshama and the kesher of the etzem in the Eibishter, b'pshitus atzmusa yizbarach from the Eibishter. Abamira Katoires is indicatory of the avodah mitzate kesher, and therefore it's a mizbecha pnimi. It's tafkir on the inside. I would point out before, it doesn't have to do with ordinary, in inverted commas, inyanim of the Mishkan, like out on the outside and on the Mizbeach HaChitzain. It's got to do with Koved Hashem. It's more for His sake, because the Yechida and the Etzem and Neshama, they're only for the Eibishter and for Yichud in the Atzmas. They don't have any other in Klal. They're not shaykh to anything. Klal Chutz Mizeh. Therefore, this Mizbeach is right on the inside of the, and it's Moshuk Keneged Oren. It's just the curtain, the paredes, and it between it and the Oren HaKodesh, the Etzeminen, the Kedushas Ki Elyoina in the whole Beis HaMikdash, the whole Mishkan. That's called the Mizbach HaPnimi. Pnimi meaning the Pnimi Yusalei. Like we saw in some of our last night, there's the Ini from Oimek Pnimius Alei, which is called Tmimus Alei. The Etzemini from the Tmimas, and the way to get to that Tmimas is to be interested always in what is the Kavanah of everything. Not just what can I gain from it, but what is the Kavanah? What is the ultimate purpose of Kol Dover? And that's the Chinuch of Lubavitch tells us. The Chinuch of Lubavitch is that you worry not so much what can I gain from an Indian, but what is the Kavanah? Ma'hu atachlis, ma'hu Kavanah, ma tzarich liot. מה לא טוב בשביל כולנו, אבל מה צריך להיות? ובמה לא יהיה טוב? On that basis, before we say that the Katoras is indicative of this high and unbelievable kesher, and the Rebbe's got a sikha, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, I think he quotes it, I'm not sure, but Al Chaponi, the Frierdiker Rebbe, says in the Sefer Lekuti Diburim, Frierdiker Rebbe says an amazing thing. He says that all the Avedas in the Beis HaMikdash were all connected with all sorts of inyanim which had to do with kapara and slicha and elevating all sorts of negative things into positive. He said, however, the Ketoras had all sorts of tremendous preparations, but it had a much higher aim, similar to what we're saying here. And then he says the most amazing thing. He said, in the life of Chassid, he said, what is the Ketora? And he says, Sipurei Tzadikim. He said, telling the stories about the Rabbeim particularly, and B'klal about Tzadikim, he said, that's even for Ketores. That's the most amazing thing. Because when you tell a story about a Tzadik, well, that affects, or that part of you which, knows the truth about what is a Tzadik. I once heard an amazing story. There was once a guy in Russia, that the Hasidim knew him, that he fell and he became Amishai to the most terrible inyanim. He became almost a leader amongst the communists, and he was into all sorts of grimy and unpleasant things. When he was a young boy, he'd sing Tomchet Tamim. Maybe he learned Tomchet Tamim as a kid for a few months or something like that. So once he happened to be walking by, and he saw all these Chassidim in a martev, in a cellar, and they're for bringing. For him to walk past, these are dangerous things. So a lot of the guys said, listen, get out of here quick, he's likely to be an informer. It could be that he's big trouble. So one of the Chassidim said, no, let's call him in, Davkir. They called him in, and they sat him down, and they gave him a chayim, and then he asked, what are you guys doing? So we said, we're for bringing, confidently. They said to him, we're bringing. So he said, I must tell you, he said that I've fallen into the most terrible things, and I've fallen away, and he said, I'm a write-off completely. Look what it means to be a Yid. He said, but I'll tell you one thing. He said, I can't forget the Rebbe Nishma Sayyid. He said, he meant the Rebbe. He said, I saw him when I was a boy, and he said, every now and then I think about him, and he said, maybe that's going to help me in Olam Haba. He thinks about the Rebbe. So isn't that an amazing thing? He got this guy going completely nuts. He was completely out of his mind. And yet none of us, he said, he thinks about the Rebbe. He reminds himself of the Rebbe. So that's an amazing thing. For example, this morning, I had to go somewhere briefly in B'nai Brak. I very rarely go to any shops, certainly I have no time. But I had to go and pick up, I'd given some mezuzahs to be checked. I went to pick them up. I walked across a road in B'nai Brak, right close to Rabbi Kiva Street, and I met a guy that said to me, Shalom Aleichem. So I met the guy and I gave my hand to him to shake my hand, and a taxi drove by right on the side street where we were, and the taxi driver looked at me and he saw my Mashiach badge. So in the middle of they were honking him from behind, he desperately groped for his kippah that he had. And so he struggles to put this kippah on his head, and then he says, Yechi HaMelech HaMashiach. In the midst of a taxi driver had to grapple to get his kippah on his head, and he saw me with this Mashiach badge. So he said, Yechi HaMelech HaMashiach. And he wasn't joking, he wasn't laughing or just making fun. He said, Yechi HaMelech HaMashiach. In other words, that the Rebbe reaches people, you never know who and how and what. It comes on, the message of the Rebbe, and he knows that the Rebbe means Mashiach. Okay, wise peak for us, man. That's what it's about. That's what the Rebbe said, when you tell Sipurei Tzadikim, and you mention the Indian from Tzadikim, and you get involved in the Rebbeim, then that's the Keteros. That's the Kibur, the Etzem Nishama, and that'll always hold you. And the Koyach of the Rebbe is that he holds you. And that's the Indian, the Kad Ketira, that's the Indian for Yechida. Therefore, one of the titles in the word Yechidus, having a Yechidus with the Rebbe is Rosh Yechida, that reveals the very essence of Yonashim. Baruch Hashem, they helped me. I was able on quite a number of occasions to have that killer from Yechida Shabbat Nefesh. I was actually in Yechidus on Kama occasion. It follows that the Yechida and Keturah is all one thing, and maybe even Lamayla Mizeh. Or that's the Etzem Kesher of a Yid with Etzem Ha'elikus. And if comes along the Rebbe in the Sikha, I think it's in Chelik Kofov, comes along the Rebbe, and he says that's the shot in the Gemara that called Tainis, and he mentions the Rashi says called Tefillah. She'ain boy mipoisha Yisrael, ain't a Tainis ve'ein. He said that the whole shleimus of our fasting, the whole shleimus of our davening, is when we reach the Avodah Shalom Alameh, Ta'am V'daz, and we come to these kashas and alakus in the oven, which is unlimited, the embassy in what a yid is and what he can reveal and what he can give. Oh, that's the keteras, that's the kesher atzmi, the one and only kesher that Rav Shimon mentioned. He had it the whole time. He lived with it every moment. But chad ketira is katana, be'achidu, be'ilahita, that consumes everything with this holy fire. If we come to that madrega, which we should, then we have everybody together with us, and we can take in the Poisha Yisrael, and on the contrary, we should take them in. Now that's why Rashi wanted to suggest that's why Rashi says, Al Yekal Be'einecha. In other words, Rashi doesn't say you have to do it, and please klum. By certain implications, like we said before, imply, but Rashi negates that idea. Rashi says that Keteris is the Etzem Anishoma, the Inafin Yechida, or Lamaylam is the Etzem Kesher, the Chad Ketira is Katana, or when you get up that high, then you can't talk about what you're Mechuya to do and what you're not Mechuya. But that's an Inafin Rishus. And therefore it's brought down, the Alter Rebbe says in L'Kutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe says that the Gemara Paskins in Masechta Brachas, that Tfilas Arvis Rishus. That Tfilas Arvis is really only a permission. It's not chiyuv. You're not mechuyev, but it's a reshut. So the Alter Rebbe brings in Shulchan Aruch that kiblo kol aderos kiblo alayim kechoyva. Aber ein nachanami the etzem meaning from tefillas avos is a reshut. Aber Yidden took on himself to daven maariv just like other tefillas. Aber b'emes it's a reshut. So the Alter Rebbe says lama reshut. Why should tefillas avos be reshut? So the Alter Rebbe says the highest of all the davenings is tefillas avos stuff. It's the highest. I mean, don't be surprised, because you'll find all over in the Siddur like that. You know, the Siddur used to say, if you came to the Rebbe on Rosh Hashanah, then you heard how the highest Indian in the whole world is Rosh Hashanah. There's nothing higher than Rosh Hashanah, and that's the highest day, and everything else is going into it. You stayed for Yom Kippur, then you heard the Maimon of an Erev Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is the highest day. There's no other day. Only Yom Kippur. All the other days are nothing like Yom Kippur. They're just a horrible almond. You stay till Sukkot. Ooh, the highest day is nothing higher. Just battle everything else. You stay till Simchas Torah. Ooh. In other words, you keep finding the highest. You know. No, but I say it. In other words, everything is the highest. So the highest possible, the highest possible meaning is Tfilas Arabic. I'm not going into the reasons. He gives the davening Arabic is the most high. He said it's so high that you can't really be mechayev somebody to do it. In other words, it's so high that Nivroim can't really reach that high, and therefore you can't oblige them. And therefore it's a reshut. They can take on themselves if they want, but you can't really oblige them because it's so high. In a similar way, we can say that the union from the Ketores, and this union of the Ketereship and Neshama, which is the union of the Yechideship and Nefesh, and the Etzem Iskasher, Kesher, of a Yid in Erakus, that's B'der Reshus. You can't be mechayev that. You can't say, listen, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. No, the Neshama itself tells you that that's what you should do. And that's the Dova HaNochim, and therefore he writes it in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Siddur. But that was the last psak of the Alter Rebbe. He writes, Nochin Loima. It's a right thing to say before you die. Because then you link with all Yidden, and that's mitzad the Etzem HaNeshama. You can't really be mechayev something to do that. But Nochin, it's a proper and right thing. And that's what the Rabbanan say, when I get to the Aguda of the Lulav, that it's a mitzvah, it's not mamish, an absolute chiyuv of it's a dova teiv, zeh keili v'anvehu. That's the beauty of Yiddishkeit, to do that, because that comes mitzad the inyan of the Etzem HaNeshama. You can't really be mechayev that, the pashtas of Al Chaponim ein l'mayla mizeh. That's the dova haki naila. Therefore, Rashi says, Al yekal be'einecha. It shouldn't be light in your eyes. I can't be mechayev you. I can't say that you're mechayev. Favuz v'alasem mitzad the Keteres, Etzem HaNeshama. The Etzem Kesher in Etzem HaLakut. Those are shoes. You're beyond the inyan from Choyva over there already. You're in an angel shul. Therefore, Rashi says, Al yekal be'agudas tfiloseinu v'tayniseinu v'tfiloseinu, because the whole inyan of them is aguda. Like Abaye says, that's the inyan from aguda achas. The inyan from aguda is when all sorts of different things join up and they become one inyan. And there was a very fascinating thing. If you look up in the Kuntres Chayim, but that was the famous Kuntres what the Rebbe Rashab wrote for the Tolchei Tmimim. When he found the Tolchei Tmimim, the Kuntres Chayim, you see towards the end, he keeps referring to the Shivas Tolchei Tmimim and to Lubavitch in general. He keeps referring to this Aguda Seinu. He calls it Aguda Seinu. That's unusual. Why would he use a word like that? Wasn't such Aguda Seinu? Well, the Koyach from Tolchei Tmimim and the Koyach from Lubavitch is to take the etzem of all Yidden and to join them together. They become one Matzis, even though they're different. They're different people. And when I first came to Eretz, a lot of the people who were learning in Tomchemim were Taiman and Shiyingalai. Today they're big Chassidim about it. They're Bocher, Taimonim and people from Russia. And it's written, Oilei Taimon. If you look at the original of the Tomchei Tmim here in Eretz, and the Rebbe said he wants it dafki that way. And he wants it all the Swadishim and the Swadische Cheva and the Russische, and they should learn in Tomchei Tmim. And there's many of them today. I know many of them throughout Eretz Yisrael, that they're Taimanish people, and they are mamish chassidik l'bav. Some of you can talk Yiddish. Because they are mamish, they are chelik atzmim and Tolchei Tmim, because Tolchei Tmim is aguda. It's aguda seinu. You look in the Kuntres Chayim, you see the Rebbe Shab writes it, kama piyomim. That's the twetch in Rashi. Agudas, timely saying of it was built on diuk of Abaye. It comes out of he said that that's the unity of everybody mitzad their etzem. Remember, if you only go into the etzem, it doesn't matter. You can be from Madagascar, or you can be chleis from Vanet, you can be from Alaska, or chleis from Vanet. But as long as you're a Yid, you got the Yiddish and the Neshama, you have a part in Tolchei Tmim, and you have a part in the Kesher Amiti and the Kesher Atzmi from the Ketera. That's the inyan of the Ketera. We see that the Keteras was whenever things got tough, what did we do? We went to the Keturah. See, whenever there was a Magefa, there was a terrible Magefa down in Pasha Shlatlach or Pasha Chukas over there. It's written that Aaron came running with the Keturahs, and all of a sudden the whole Magefa stopped. We find in many cases that the Keturahs, well, that was the Indian that stopped and was machaper and all sorts of improper things, because improper things happen mitzad the giluim, mitzad the inyanim, how things come down into the ordinary limited koiches of the man. Mitzad the kesher atzmi of all Yidden together. If you touch on that, then the Rebbe says, oh no, this is meine Kinder, this is bonim tem, Hashem elakechem, the etzem of Yidden. There he can't do anything, everything has to be botel, and everything has to stop. That's mitzad the inyan of the Keturah. Dafki mitzad the giluy of the inyan of the Keturah. And ever was brought down in the Zohar Kodesh. It's a very interesting thing. It's brought down that if you say Keturah twice a day, and you should be medactic in your tefillahs to mention, to say the Keturahs, then you bring down these blessings of the Keturahs. You bring down a bittul of all sorts of improper things, and you bring down, you push away anything unpleasant from Yidden by saying the Keturahs. It's brought in the Zohar Kodesh, a bigger reason in last week's parasha, and also right in this week's parasha. It's a big area. I haven't got the time right now to go into it, but it's a very fascinating subject. The dark you through the Amiras HaKeturahs, you bring all sorts of brachas, fatzlachas in your own life and in the life of the community and everything around, and that's mitzad the fact that that's a gilui ha'etzem. So we see that that's an akuda of Chassidus Chabad, akuda seinu. It's an akuda from everybody together, mitzad the inyan of the gilui ha'etzem. And the kesher of the etzem in it, the table, kesher. Among that binds everything together, and that makes our eretz yesod, that makes a proper world and a better world, and the world the way it should be. And we see that the Rebbe Melech approach even the better part, even the higher part of the goyim, by the non-Yidden. The Rebbe called out in them whatever they have. They don't have Yechida, but whatever they got in the higher and better way, the Rebbe appealed to it. In other words, we see that when you appeal to the better and the highest point in people, you get it. Because that's the Yidden unites them and makes them an aguda achas. I remember when Yidden are Megala, they're aguda achas, they're poil, they're aguda achas, B'chol Shivim L'Shayinais, and all the people around, and all the Goyim and all the Shavim Mitzvahs, but they know it come up into the world, and it becomes a different world. And that's the Inyan of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. He is Inyan to Mamshich Agudas Chassidei Chabad, Agudas Chassidei Chabad, Beis Agudas Chassidei Chabad. And that's the Inyan from Aguda Achas, the Inyan from Union, Mitzati Amiti Sinyan. Therefore on 770, it was written 770, he's in Paris, Beis Agudas Chassidei Chabad. I say, look at 770, I see it. They stayed to it. Both over there and over here, they have so hoch, and I saw before Mamish. Over here. If we go with that Indian, the union of all Yidden, and we look at Yidden that way, and we see them that way, then in a way we're looking the way the Rebbe sees all Yidden. And that's the way the Rebbe wants us to see. Now everybody's one or one union, one joined together, and the Avodah in the Mishkan, which expressed that is the Keturah. And therefore it's a special Inyan that, like the Ramban says, that it's only the Kovid Hashem. It's something that comes at the end of everything, because it joins up and sums up everything and brings everything to its ultimate shleimus. I feel that the ganze Avodah, the Mishkan, even after you've initiated the ganze Mishkan. And if thanks to the Eibishter, that we had the unbelievable schus to learn in Beis Aguda Seinu. We learned in the Aguda from the Rabbeim, the Alter Rebbe and all the Rabbeim, and particularly from Rabbeinu Malkeinu Melech HaMashiach Shlita, the Rebbe, that we Baruch Hashem we are zeicha to learn in his yeshiva and to be zeicha, and that unbelievable reach HaKeturahs, this unbelievable Indian reach of Makif and the Indian HaKeturahs, and that joins all of us together and all Yidden together. And the Eivish is going to answer all the tefillahs, and he's going to mean that we don't have to fast so much, because it won't need to be tiny seinu, but the eagle will be tefillah seinu. And the Eivish will answer all the tefillahs, and all Yidden are praying for the Yidden from Mashiach. I saw a taxi car, I saw my Mashiach, like he said, Yechia Melech HaMashiach, grappling to put his he's sitting on his head. And my taxi driver that I travel was quite weak. He said to me just the other night that he said, it's becoming more noticeable. More people are talking about Mashiach, just in general. Even amongst the so-called fry world, you hear people mentioning this idea of the Mashiach. And I said, well, who's responsible for that? Well, he said, I know what you're going to say. I said, yeah, who's responsible for that? He said, well, you're Rebbe. That he's responsible for it. And so people are beginning to learn. The truth is coming out. People are beginning to realize that there's one and only Inyan, these colors of Melech Mashiach, Teikuf Miyad, and an oven from Bechat Katira is Katana, and it should be an oven from Simcha, Be'ez Hashem and Tur Levov, and everybody should have what he needs, and the Halachov and the Simcha and Tur Levov, we should use it all in a way that it will be a emissary, flameless, Ba'abidosi al Eretz Yisodom.